We are going to welcome Ivor Cummins, who had graduated from the University College of Dublin with an engineering degree in the criteria of biochemical stream. He has a lot of experience in metabolic health, and usually he's in my place because he has a very popular YouTube channel called The Fat Emperor. Hi, Ivor. Welcome to our show.
Hi, guys. Great to be here.
Good afternoon. So, how about you take us into a brief history about the World Health Organization?
Yeah, it's kind of good, very important to know the history of where these things came from. And I know a lot of the conversation, and rightly so, is on the current debacles, especially since 2020. But in terms of history, I just jumped onto ResearchGate here, the first director of the WHO, Brock Chisholm, and a quote from him that was very sinister, and this is back, I think, in the 50s. To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas. So the driving force behind the WHO was supposedly health, but really it was just one wing of the Rockefeller empire to get globalism, full global management or government over the West and ultimately the East. So the whole thing is quite stunning when you know the full story. And I'll just mention Jacob Nordengard and Rockefeller Controlling the Game. If you Google that, you'll find his astonishing book, and I got all my material from him. But basically, if we just look at the guy who set up the WHO and what he said, well, the Rockefellers in 1959 said that their challenge, working with governments and leaders, was to build a new structure which will make possible the fulfillment of the basic purposes of humanity. So remember, the Rockefellers were up to their neck in government, intelligence agencies. They were the richest family in America. And interestingly, John D. Rockefeller, the generally accepted sociopathic mogul of big oil in the early 1900s, he set up the League of Nations. And it didn't take because America wouldn't join. And then he was successful, and his five sons were successful in setting up the United Nations. And the Rockefellers funded the land and the buildings for the first United Nations building. And they're absolutely instrumental. And as Dr. Nordengard says, they treated the United Nations as their own private club. So if people think the United Nations and the subsidiary, the WHO, or the IPCC on the climate thing, if they think that they're somehow grassroots from countries around the world, that's absolutely untrue. They all come from Rockefeller, intelligence services, the deep state, if you will. This is all contrived for world government and control of the people. And I'll just do one more quote before stopping for a moment, maybe. We cannot escape, and indeed should welcome, the task which history has imposed on us. This is the Rockefeller brothers in '59. This is the task of shaping a new world order in all its dimensions: spiritual, economic, political, and social. So the scope they had was multi-generational. They put enormous amounts of money, funding, and political influence into creating the UN and, of course, the WHO. And now we're beginning to feel the true impact of their vision, I would say. So maybe we'll have a brief chat on that and then get back to some more of the history.
Today in Europe, we speak about democracy. Is this democracy?
Yeah. No, democracy was always a challenge for the oligarchs, if you will, or this huge group of oligarchs around the world, all deeply connected now into governments and corporations. So there was a quote years ago, I forget who, if the vote was in any way impactful, we wouldn't be allowed to have it. So we tend to get shepherded like cattle or sheep into this democratic system. But at the end of the day, as we see, especially in the last decade, no matter who you vote for, you get the same outcome. So in Ireland, it's right in our faces the last 5 years. Both main parties and the opposition all supported lockdowns, masks, and all of the madness. Totally. In fact, the opposition were actually shouting at the government to lock us down harder, even though we're the hardest lockdown country in Europe. right, in Ireland. So this is the problem we have. There's no alternative. And when other alternative parties spring up, either they get sidelined, attacked by the government-controlled media, which happens all over the Western world, of course, or indeed in Romania and Germany recently, moves are made by the same guys up the top to actually outlaw the opposing parties who oppose this tyranny. You know, it's pretty tough. So I think one key thing for people is the only thing in my mind, and I've been saying this in my public shows across the UK and Ireland and on my channels, etc. I think the only thing that will beat this madness is grassroots pushback, the people rising with awareness. So our most important task is to get awareness out there so more and more people understand how the game is rigged. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's global management from oligarchies. So if more people understand it and push back with direct democracy and opposing it, you know, on the streets, in discussions, all over the place, it will make their job extremely difficult. But as we saw with COVID, sadly, when people get caught unguarded and they get massive propaganda in a deluge on their little heads, they don't know what to do. So we need awareness. I think that's the critical thing, and I think great job you guys are doing.